Think that works? Can you hear me? Okay. I think everybody can hear me okay. Sweet. I'm going to start this as a PSA, say hello to everybody. What's up, folks? This is a end of the month, last Monday of every month. We're doing a live where everybody can join. All subscribers, it's not just for the community, which for everybody who doesn't know what that is, that's kind of replaced Patreon for myself going into 2021. And this is a grab your knives. We're all gonna sharpen together. Shout out to you. Like, give me a heads up in the comments if you are going to do that today. If you want to just use this as like a fun Q&A, I'm gonna pop questions up. You know what? I'm actually gonna do that now. Here, grab your knives. Whoops, we're sharpening. Let me retype that. And then I can do this, add that to the broadcast. Sweet. So, yeah, this is like the sharpen and chill video got kind of like an interesting vibe. Some people like really liked it and they're like, I love the fact that I can sharpen my knives to this. And there's music and like you're sharpening with me. And then other people were like really, they didn't like it. Like there's a lot of dislikes on that video, but I'm more interested in giving you the motivation and the permission to kind of like your knives need to be sharpened. If you feel like you're behind on your sharpening skills or you want to just kind of like jump in and know that you're not the only one that needs some maintenance, I think I put a little funny quip in the description of this video that's like, let's face it, your knives are ready to be sharpened, and mine are. Quite frankly. So let me grab an apron. If you have any questions that you want to kind of like pop in the chat, feel free to do so. I'm just grabbing an apron because I don't want to get my t-shirt all wet or full of steel mud stuff. And yeah, if you're the same type of person that needs to grab your knives, soak your stones, do all that sort of stuff, please do so. I'm going to be here for about an hour. Whether or not all of that is sharpening doesn't really matter. But if you're joining this and you're like, what is this for? This is, you need to sharpen your knives, so let's do it. And I'm sorry I keep looking not at the camera because my computer's right here so I can see what you guys are putting in the chat. So question came through, how many knives am I sharpening today? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, possibly 7. As part of, 2 of them are prospectively part of a review. And then at the end of this live stream, we actually have a cool unboxing from one of you folks that one of you folks sent to me that's going to be a part of some new content going forward. So that's a little bit of a tease to stick towards the end. But yeah, feel free to let me know how many knives you all are sharpening today, questions you might have, challenges you might be experiencing with sharpening. And then this is just kind of a fun way to come together. And then I'm going to share a little bit about like what's happening in the community because these happen every single Monday. We orient them a little bit differently on Mondays when we're just community focused. But I wanted to do something kind of like more fun and hey, thanks. Packing on muscle mass, yeah, it's true. Really been trying to get my gym routine locked in. I mean, people are going to be asking about gear, so here's the gear. I'm going to go do a gear rundown if anybody has been needing to take a second to grab their stones, soak their stones. I'm also like, I want to tweak this. I would love to do this more regularly with you folks. Like, we all sharpen together. We all write recipes together. We all, like, I want to be a unifying force for everybody. And so these might be more regular. And so I'm kind of like, I'm nervous on how the mic quality is going to be because I'm trying to like point this towards my chest in a good audio producer fashion. But like, should I be wearing a lav mic? Should I boom this so that it's right near my face? All really good questions. So I'm sorry if this gets loud. I'm really like eager to hear your feedback. If you're like, the audio needs to be fixed, I would love for there to be music in sessions like this. You guys, please just let me know. I'm going to get to questions once I start sharpening, so please be patient, just give me a few seconds. Gear is what I was talking about. So I am using the sync bridge that a friend of mine gave me from Kramer Zwilling Henkel. I don't want this to drip on my computer. but you can see that right there. Looks like that. So that's the sink bridge I'm using. I am using my 1000, 6000 Mizuyama. Starting on the... There's a couple of these that I need to redo the edge on, so I have my 300 grit diamond stone that I'm going on. And these Mizuyama stones, you can't really soak them. I find that I have actually cracked. I have my 3000 grit here just in case, but I have cracked one of these before and I had to buy a new one. So just make sure you're aware of which stones you can and should soak and which ones you should avoid that like the plague on. If you don't have a sink bridge, there's actually like this cool dish rack thing that my mother-in-law got us, and that effectively could serve the same purpose as a sink bridge if you're not into that. But you know, I think everybody knows that you could kind of like prop up some cutting boards, make this ergonomic for yourself. I find that the more like comfortable this is to do, the more likely you are to actually show up and continue to do more. So that's good. Ooh, great question from Tyler on boning knives. Sharpening boning knives. I'm going to grab a boning knife. You know what? I might not actually have a boning knife. I will still illustrate the example that I'm going to try to show you. But it's a different type of way to think about sharpening, and I'll illustrate that in a hot second here. John, I want to get to your question in a hot second, but I just want to leave this up here as more people are joining. And yeah, we can get to a point where hopefully a bunch of people are sharpening together, and then by the end of this afternoon, everybody's going to feel super good about either going into work tomorrow or the next meal you're going to cook is going to be all that more pleasurable, because I think we all know that feeling of nicely sharpened knives. And you know, as we get the chat going, I think I might throw up some questions on the screen and I can answer some of your questions as I'm sharpening. Starting today, let me actually get this out of the way here. Get the sheaths all off of everything. And I'll share some like routine things that I do to make sharpening a lot easier for myself as well. Okay, so first bit is I judge where I'm at, because I usually go 300 grit, 1000 grit, 3000 grit, 6000 grit, and then I will strop all of them. And so to keep track of where I'm at, I will place them in, and I judge based on the direction that the knife is facing. So all my knives are facing this direction right now, and then after I do the 300 grit on the ones that need it, I will flip them. So they will flip to be this way. And so, yeah, Tom, you should definitely, like, after you watch this, give sharpening a try. Like, I'm wanting to normalize all of us sharpening, you know, and like the habit of it, and just like destigmatizing it as more people see that there's, you know, oh, this is a normal thing that chefs can do for their own tools. I want that to be normal. So I'll start, all my knives are facing this way. After they get done on the stone, I'll flip them. And, you know, certain people might place them like this and then like this, you know, but then it's like a nice way to know, especially when you're doing like more than 4 or 5 knives, it's nice to know, did I do that one on the 1000 grit stone yet, or have I not done that yet? And so I based on how they're sitting on the tray or on the countertop, that's where you're at, or like, oh yeah, I've already done that grit. So I got a couple here that I'm just gonna quickly run through. On the 300 grit, they shouldn't need that much attention. But I actually find that this gives like a really good burr to start. And then the 1000 grit can work its magic. So this just got the 300 grit. This is the Aura 2. for everybody that hasn't seen that review video. So now I'll flip this, and now I know that that one has received that. This one definitely needs a little bit of love. I've been cooking with this a ton at home. This is the Sweeson Enox that I got rehandled by Isaiah Schrader, and this has been like my go-to home cooking knife, and it definitely needs a re-up on the edge because it's kind of been the one that I reach for. I've been watching a lot of like Pokemon card openings lately on YouTube, and there's this guy who just like constantly talks over himself while he's crinkling the packs, and so I'm gonna try to not do that. Yeah, I know you can't see like what I'm working on. I can adjust the camera angle if we wanna. Would that be valuable? Would being able to see the stones be valuable? Let me go around. Let me spin the camera around and do that for you folks. All right, is that helpful? You can see my water bottle. You can't see my forehead. All right, cool. Sweet, sweet, sweet. This is called you folks building this with me. Okay, you can't really see my, you can't see my forehead, but that's all good. My forehead is not required. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna try to not talk while I'm like steel is on stone, if that's okay with everybody. So yeah, this 300 grit just kind of like, if there's any chips, which I don't usually end up with chips in my knives, but you know, if you have unfortunately done a prep style project that puts some chips in your knife, starting at a lower grit is really, really helpful. And because this grit is so coarse, I usually do like maybe 10 passes on this. And what that does is it prevents the really coarse grit from taking too much steel off of your knife, which can actually be really, really harmful in the long run if you're just constantly like every week you're subjecting your knives to a 300 grit stone. You will start to notice that like your chef knife starts turning into a slicer a little bit. Oh, you see half my stone. What's wrong with that? Okay, more down. All right, cool. You guys are producers here. Does that work? Do I use sharpen santokus with the same technique? Yes, I can. I hope that works. I also moved my focus point so that the point of focus is right here. I hope that's helpful. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. So yeah, if you're new to this, make sure you're using the entire stone. You're not just kind of like staying in the middle. That's a really common error that I see first-time sharpeners making. And the pressure gets applied when you're not cutting into the stone. So if I'm pushing this way, that's kind of like my reset point, and then I apply the pressure as I'm moving away from where the edge is. And that's going to build that burr up towards the other side. Then we do our quick flip. Flip it off. Or carve it down just a hair. This is the ZDP 189 Bunka knife, for everybody that hasn't seen that review. I also really love this knife for working at home. This is a knife from a company called New West Knife Works. This is one that got sent to me. Everybody on the community already knows this knife well because you've seen my unboxing for this one. And this is one that I am going to review. This was the requested one from the community for me to feature as part of a review. Sorry, my focus point is down towards the bottom of the screen now because my stone is there. So I have been working with this for a couple of weeks now, and I'm wanting to see how it does on a stone. And see how the edge holds up. For the most part, it's been really, really nice. but I want to see how it polishes because it's a really like, it's a very industrial steel. Like it doesn't feel like there's anything like fancy to it. It's relatively hard, but not. That's what I'm trying to see here because there's a couple of knives that they sent me where the edge holds up better than this one, and I think because this is such a thin, like it's such a thin blade that I don't know if it's actually going to hold up as well. This is the tire knife from Roland Lanier. I think everybody has seen this as part of another review on the channel. I haven't been using this a ton at home, really, but since I got it, I know that it, you ever have that when like you know what knives need attention in your bag? Like you just know. This is one of those knives. Alright, it's a good enough edge rework. And then I think everybody knows this one, the Misono UX10. It's such an awkward angle to hold knives at. All right, let's do some questions while I'm going through here. Bernat, the bunka feels really good. One of my favorites because I've never actually gravitated towards like Nikiri style knives for vegetable prep, but the bunka kind of checks that box for me. And so when I do like meal prep on Sundays for Anna and I, when I just need to like blast through a ton of vegetables, I'll usually use the bunka. And then question from Tyler here. How do I go from low grit all the way to 6,000 on stainless steels as well? I have found softer steels don't do much on high grit stones. Yeah, I will often pick certain knives in my kit. This is one of them, the UX10, where I actually won't go up to 6,000. Not because I think that this is a soft steel or anything, but it just doesn't benefit that much from the polish that the 6,000 grit gives. And, you know, admittedly, like, it's part laziness too, you know? Like, I'll only pick, like, my Ninox, the Aura, other Japanese, like, more carbon steel knives that I have, I will take all the way up to 6,000. But yeah, for the most part, not every single, just because you have the grit of stone, especially people who have, like, 8,000 grit stones, you don't have to take it up that high. It's not super necessary, if that's helpful. I'll get to a couple more questions in a second. Pop this back on the screen here. So everybody knows why we're here. Usually, too, I like to do the 300 grit, even though, I don't know, some people are like, they're adamantly against kind of like lower grit stones, but I find that, you know, it can really identify like places in your edge that need reworking, or there's this really common error, and I'm going to see if I can focus the camera. So a lot of people don't give the heel enough pressure. And so what ends up happening is the heel doesn't get ground down enough at the same pace that the rest of the belly of the blade does. And so what you'll have is this really weird effect where there's actually like a loop, a hump here, where like, are you folks understanding what I'm saying? Where if you don't follow through on your sharpening all the way through to the heel, you end up having like a little bit of extra steel, and then you have this weird millimeter that's just a little bit thicker. And then when you go to cut, you know, things like chives or whatever, you'll have like the two chives as part of the bunch don't get cut because there's this heel of steel that prevents that part of the blade from actually making contact with the board. And so I find that I will almost always, especially on these knives, the ones that I know, like this knife is 10 years old for me. Like, I've had this knife since 2011, and so I always try to make sure that I give this a little bit of a push on the 300 grit stone, so that and you can check this too by like putting it on like a flat cutting board, and if you put it here, if you can rock it back and forth a little bit, that's bad, you know? Like you want it to be able to sit flush on the board. And so, you know, if you have knives where you've worked a little bit of steel off of the edge, you just need to like keep that top of mind, because over time, that can actually be really not harmful from the sense of like it's going to ruin your knife, but it's going to affect your performance, right? And what I'll do is I'll usually just press my thumb down into the heel here, do a few passes, and then on the other side I just use I'm right-handed, so I'll use my index finger, and just, you know, make sure you follow through. On that edge, if that makes sense to everybody. Okay, so I've gone through and all my knives are facing the other way now. So for the most part, that means like, and you know, if you need to take a phone call or someone drops a package at your door, your kids are running around or whatever, and you need to come back, it's a good way to keep track of where your knives are at. So I'll rinse this. The 300 grit is done. Another thing if you're using wet stones is to make sure that you let them dry thoroughly. Because I know that there's a lot of people who will use like plastic storage containers to store their stones in, and if you put them away while they're not fully dry, you will come back and there will be a bunch of mold in your stones. Shout out to you if I'm describing problems that you deal with or that you've experienced. All right. Got my paper towel stack. Okay, so now we're moving on to the 1000 grit side. I don't know, I'm going to take a few of these up to 3000, but I might skip and might just go right to 6000. I haven't really decided yet. Let's do a few more questions before we jump in here. How do I feel about oil stones? I haven't used oil stones, to be honest. I don't see the downside. I mean, it's kind of like you're pre-lubricating in the same way that people say that like the mud needs to develop to kind of like allow for better, you know, friction management, I would call it, on the stones. I'm just such a purist, and I know that like the best sharpeners in the world gravitate towards wet stones, and so that's just kind of been my experience. I don't really deviate from what I know. Might be a downfall of mine, but no, I know people who use them and really, really like them. How do I feel about New West knife works and how Bob Kramer knives? I haven't used a like Bob Kramer has made this knife. I have held the Zwilling partnership he did. And for everybody that hasn't listened to the episode that I did with Mareko Malmasi, he is the guy who worked with Bob Kramer to develop that knife to be pitched to Zwilling, which eventually got mass marketed. So I've held that, and they're not the same in my mind. New West is very much so like, this is a utilitarian. You might find it at kind of like a local, you know, store in like the mountain time zone of like, this knife was made in America. And the steel that they're using is really nice. The handle style is, you know, can really be certain people's cup of tea. And there's details, right? Like with the beveling, and the blade profile is also really nice, because I think that this is very much so like that hybrid between a chef knife and a slicer. You see how much wider this one is on the blade profile. This is much thinner, but this constitutes as a chef knife in their portfolio. And so very, very interesting blade profiles. Bob Kramer is just like in another league as far as like working with steel, different Damascus patterns. I mean, he kind of put the big chunky handle on the map for people. And this, when I unboxed this the first time, I told everybody on the video, like my initial reaction was like, this feels like a sports car. Like just feels like quick and nimble, and it's just like it can take turns, you know what I mean? So big fan of these guys, but I don't think that it's in the same conversation as Bob Kramer, unfortunately. All right, I'm going to get to a couple more questions. What's up, Zachary? Good to have you here. Yeah, I didn't upgrade, Legion. I was sharing with a friend who came over for dinner once how I sharpened my knives, and I showed him it, and he was like, that's kind of janky. And he was like, I'm kind of one of those people who, it was, my birthday was coming up, I think, or Christmas. And I don't really like, I'm not a big gift guy. Like, I don't really like getting gifts. And he, I think, saw that and was like, I have to get him a sync bridge. And he sent me a link before he got it for me. And I was like, yeah, that could totally work. I mean, mechanically, it's literally the same thing. This is like screws connecting different pieces of wood. But this is definitely less janky looking. All right, I'm going to get to more questions in a bit. Switch back here. Okay, so to recap, I'm on the 1,000 grit side, everybody. Hopefully that sound is better too for everybody. All right. Let's do a quick question. So now that we're on the 1,000 grit side, I'm going to face this the other way, if that makes sense. So that keeps track, especially like me right now when I'm going in and looking at questions. All right, Arna. Always trying to use such a coarse stone on Japanese bunk. I'm afraid to chip it. What's your opinion? Do you think you're overthinking it? You're not overthinking it. I think you need to just understand the change in pressure and angle. Not necessarily angle, because the angle should more or less stay the same, but just think about the mechanics of like that razor thin edge going over bumps on a road. You know what I mean? And if it hits the bump the wrong way, yes, it's going to chip, but you can almost like decrease your pressure and the number of passes that you're doing. So you're almost like more flips, right? So you're flipping and changing the side more often, and you're not applying as much pressure. I find that that's like the worst. And Don Wynn, previous guest on the podcast, owner of Don Wynn Knives, did a really cool example on a wheel where he just held a knife up against a wheel, and it just like it heats up the metal so much that it just like tweaks it. And I'm not saying that you're going to do that on your stone, but it's not to say that you can't use a coarse stone on Japanese knives. You just need to make sure that you acknowledge how much pressure you're using. And what might end up happening is that you might need to do a few passes on that coarse stone, then do more of the work on a 800 grit to 1200 grit. Like this 1,000 grit example is really good. I spend the majority of my time here, and then the 3,000 grit and 6,000 grit are like super quick. Like it's literally just like just a polish, wax on, wax off. You know what I mean? All right. Let's move on to another knife, and then this is going to be my next question. How about that? We're learning. We're learning, everyone. We're learning how these live streams are going to go. Oh, this was so needed for this knife, everyone. Okay. All right, Blood Brethren Games. I suck at finding the angle. What do I feel for as I change the angle of the knife against the stone? So I offer the advice of using pennies, like literally the coins. And I know that coins are kind of hard to find right now. There's a national cash shortage. But what that does is it provides like this very analog feel. And then I use my thumb pressed up against the spine of the knife. Let me see if I can get this to show up in a good way here. Is it gonna focus? Are we gonna focus? Anyways, I think you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Where like moving your thumb up and down the spine sets the angle, and then on the other side it's your index finger. So it's like, this is so funny how I'm showing this because it's only focusing on my face. So it's like this, and you know, not the most humane example, but like I literally share that I did it when I started until my fingers bled, because you keep, like on this side, for example, you're keeping your index finger. So you'll put your pennies here, right, to feel where the angle is. You're not using the pennies up against the stone, but you put the pennies there. And for most people, the angle that they want is like 2 pennies. So if you put 2 pennies down, then you rest the knife on those pennies. You put your finger up against the spine, and you can feel like, oh, well, my finger's here, that's about the angle that I need to hit. And then you keep that finger in contact with the stone, and eventually you'll get to a place where your finger doesn't have to be there anymore. You can just feel where the angle is. And I know that's and it's the same on the other side, right? So you do the pennies, you rest it, you feel with your thumb, okay, that's where I need to be. And then, you know, you might notice that you need to use your other thumb as you move up, you know, because this thumb is only so long, you know, as you're getting up towards the tip, you're actually doing yourself a disservice if you're using this thumb as a tracker. So maybe you use this thumb and you do the same thing. You go super slow. That's, I think, the thing that most people misstep on, is that they think they have to go super fast sharpening. I had the funniest assistant teacher in culinary school, where he would like frantically like sharpen before class, and he thought he was so cool sharpening like that. I never really understood it, but like especially in the beginning, go slow, feel it. Like, it's such a feeling. People who have been sharpening for ages and ages and ages, they don't need edge guides, they don't need to use pennies, they don't need to use the fancy contraption that puts your knife at the perfect angle or clips onto the blade. It's just a feeling. And it's a little bit more exaggerated in knives that, like this knife, I've completely reworked. This is like an 80-20 bevel, more or less. And so I can put this on the stone, tilt it up, and I can feel exactly where that edge, that bevel is, because it's such a steep angle. But yeah, for the most part, go slow. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to kind of like nail it right away, because you're better off taking your time in the beginning, getting the muscle memory, and then you can kind of like move on, speed up a little bit, experiment with different angles. You know, what does it look like to... The best example I give is taking the blade off of your mandolin, because that is a true like 100 to 0 single bevel, and it doesn't require you, and it's high carbon as well, so it doesn't require you to go out and buy a $400, you know, white steel, you know, like, or blue steel carbon knife to get that feeling of like single bevel, you know, action. All right, let's do some more Arne. I'm super happy that that was helpful. I'm going to, you know, move on to the bunka, do that real quick, and then I'll move on to some more questions. Shout out to you if you're sharpening. You're doing great. Future you is going to thank you. hate that when steel builds up on one part of the knife and you think that it's a chip and you're like, no, but then you like press your finger, you wipe it away and it's really just a burr. And if you get done early, if you're not sharpening a ton of knives today, please use this time to like fix your stones if you have a stone fixer, or if you need to like oil some of your carbon knives, or if you have like a rust eraser that you need to use to like fix some spots. You know, that's the benefit of being able to watch this afterwards and just do some knife maintenance, you know? This is like the chef's version of like going out and washing our cars. You know what I mean? Did I miss a question? Oh yeah, I did. Tyler. Do I always use a circular motion on the tips? Struggle with especially sharp or small tips. That is a weird quirk that I have, and it's only on one side of the knives when I do it, if you'll notice. It's when the blade is facing away from me, and I just do it. I do it in a muscle memory way where I'm literally just like, I don't know why. It's just comfortable for me to do it, and I feel like I have better control. Because the tip is usually, it's really hard to do the tip because the angle can get so wonky from the sense of, because you have a curvature, like this is a flat plane, right? The center, the belly of the knife, and usually the heel is a parallel, like it's a single direction. The tip on most knives swoops a little bit. And so if you've ever seen those diagrams of like drawing a circle with straight lines where like if you do a line and then another line and then another line, you can eventually make a circle that's made up of just a bunch of different lines. But when you're sharpening the tip, you're having to keep all of those angles in mind. And so there's a lot of people who will talk about like, well, there's different zones of a knife, right? So you have the heel, you have the belly, and then a lot of people will say like the tip there's like 3 or 4 zones as part of the tip, and you have to like change your angle as part of that. This is a great example because like for the most part, it's right up until about here, it's straight. And then I would say there's another zone that's here that I kind of keep in mind. And then the tip, I kind of, I adjust the angle in a way that I make sure that I don't miss any spots. And that's when you'll see me like pull a knife close to my face. I'm looking to make sure that like, as I get the edge, I don't have the shinogi, which is like the place where the bevel is happening, isn't getting too thick or too thin. Like you really kind of most people either want a very consistent bevel or they want one that is kind of like unique to them, right? So certain people really like a more of a bevel to be seen towards the heel or more of a bevel to be seen towards the tip. But yeah, the weird circle motion thing, that's just like a muscle memory thing that I do just to kind of like, and I should add that when I do that, I'm kind of like, I'm applying pressure this way and there's no pressure this way. Does that make sense? So it's like, as I push it away, as I push the knife into the stone, there's no pressure, but then when I drag it back towards me, then I kind of like, that's when I add my pressure, if that makes sense. This is all very like touchy-feely, unfortunately. I'm sure I could break down some science to it, but I think everybody who's sharpened their knives knows that there's an element of like, it's like teaching someone how to run. Have you ever like tried to change how you run? It's very strange to explain to someone how to run, because it's like, oh, I just do it what feels right. But that's what I'm talking about to the other person, to the Blood Games question of like, it's better if you go slow at the beginning, because you should take your time to think about where your hands are, how much pressure you're applying. How are we doing on time? Oh, we only have 15 minutes, everybody. All right. But like I said, we're halfway done, a little over halfway done with our 1000 grit side, and that's the meat of it. This might go for longer than an hour. I'm okay with that, because I want to do that unboxing with you folks. Wow, this steel feels really nice. Roland Lanier. What a guy. Really makes great stuff, this guy. I think it's just a chunkier knife, too. It's a thick boy. Alright, UX10 coming next. These last three really don't need that much reworking. It was that Suisun and the Bunka for me, and the Aura really needed some love. Alright, and the New West Knife Works goes last. And I'm going to jump into some more questions, everyone. Yeah, I'm a little, not upset, but I'm just kind of like, I'm in a weird holding pattern with gear reviews right now because there's a Town Cutler knife that I got that I want to review, but they don't have it in stock yet. And so I don't want to put that up if they can't get any love because they don't have enough knives to sell to people. New West is getting back to me because we're kind of like working on a partnership, like a sponsored video kind of thing. And I also just think that, you know, you folks seem to really like their knives, so I think that's kind of a cool integration. And then there's a really cool, I'm teasing it here only for you folks that are here live, but I'm hopefully going to get to work with Ninox on something really cool coming up. And so that is also like, I'm pursuing that with a lot of enthusiasm right now. And so, yeah, shout out if you're a Ninox fan in the comments. All right, let's get to some more questions here. Let's see. Robert asks, how do I feel about American handmade such as Middleton, Delbert, Ely, and Nora? Have I worked with cooks in pro kitchens that use these blades? There are a couple of friends of mine who have like a Bloodroot Blades knife or, like you said, Middleton. Yeah, there's a couple that I've seen work well from like a workhorse perspective. I think that there's still an overwhelming majority of professional cooks in like higher end kitchens gravitate towards Japanese knives. And it's not bad. I just think that the psychology of buying an American made knife is usually such that it becomes like not a trophy piece, but it's like it's an achievement piece. You know, you just got sous chef, you made the lead line cook position, you know, you got a promotion, so you get in touch with one of these small makers and you have them make you a knife. And because of that, it's a knife that effectively gets used in very specialty use cases, you know, like you do the guest chef dinner or you're having the photo shoot and you're going to use that knife. Whereas like this UX10 is like it's so reliable, and like I was saying, this is like 11 years old for me. And so this, for the most part, if I had to look like across the board, I would say that, you know, a lot of people might have knives from these companies, but they might just chill at their house, you know, like they might cook with them at home more so than using them as part of their kit. So it's not to say that cooks in pro kitchens don't have these blades. It's like, when do they use them, and what do they value them as, if that makes sense. I hope that's helpful. How do you suggest hiding new knives from my girlfriend? Same, exactly. You get a knife from Middleton. Don't keep it in the drawer, right behind you in the kitchen, so that your girlfriend cuts toast in half with it and chips the edge. No, I think that there's value to getting like a lot of people keep their knives in the box that it came in. A lot of people will use like full sheaths, like a full not like a tactical sheath, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Sharp Edge Shop makes some really nice like wraps for knives, and if you were to keep, I find that a lot of people get upset when what ends up happening is, so like me, perfect example. I keep so like this knife, this Suisun knife, lives on my pegboard, right where I shoot all my videos, right? And so when I have to cook at home, I will often not open the tool chest, right, where a bunch of my, like the Bunka is, or my UX10. I go up to the pegboard and I grab the most convenient knife off of the pegboard, which is usually this one. And so the edge of this gets worked down way faster than all my other knives, just by virtue of being convenient. So that's why I'm suggesting you doing things like putting it in a wrap, putting it in, a drawer, under your bed, or like keeping it at work type of thing. Do you know what I mean? Because if people have the convenient option, and for your girlfriend, that convenient option is your brand new knife, of course she's going to use that one. Humans are lazy, so kind of like tweak your environment a little bit to change that. And I think you might be joking a little bit, but like a lot of people get mad at people like stealing their knives or using their knives at work. But it's like, if you need to cut a piece of tape and there's no scissors around, you're going to grab the knife off the countertop, even though that knife might be someone's 9-inch Ninox knife, unfortunately. Hell yeah, Thomas. That's what we want. We want you to be sharp enough to shave with. Thanks, Bernat. I know you're not here anymore, but thanks for joining. It's true. Different geometry for everyone. Yes, this is the ZDP 189. High school is offering a culinary arts course. Is there anything that I could do to set myself apart during class? I don't think that you shouldn't be out to impress anyone in a class like that, because it's either going to form like a really weird relationship with your classmates, like no one's going to want to work with you because you're the egomaniac in that class. Like no one's going to give you an award for being, a high performer in a high school culinary arts class. What you should do is make an effort to, like, if you have this learning environment, could you realistically make a better connection with your professor, where I want to learn how to make hollandaise, and I notice that's not really on our curriculum. Would you be willing to let me like experiment? So then like they pay for your ingredients, you're doing it in the kitchen that they have set out for you. You're using their tools type of thing. And then you get feedback, right? Like you can get feedback from your other classmates or from your professor. You could do more interesting things in class versus trying to like be the best in class, because realistically, an environment like that, you should focus on like absorbing as much as possible and setting yourself up for the connection that follows that opportunity. Because I don't think any, great culinary professional talks about their performance in high school culinary arts course. And it's not to diminish it, but don't focus on trying to set yourself apart or succeed, because those metrics aren't really good for anything. Like they don't provide any leverage in a real world situation. Now, if you happen to show a lot of interest, or a lot of like, this is a really curious student, and your professor, like I had, when I was in high school, I went to a local community college that had a culinary school program. And just by me being the only high school kid that was in that community college, like that helped a little bit. But I was just like, I always asked questions and stayed after and talked to my professors, and like they wouldn't let me cook in the kitchens. And so because of me just like being annoying, not being annoying, but I think you folks know what I mean. Like the student that's constantly just hungry and curious. I got a chance to like cook at the big culinary showcase event that the college did that year, and normally high school students don't get to do that, but because I was, do you know what I mean? Like that's what you want to kind of seek out, opportunities like that. Do I use a strop? I do not use you can buy it off the shelf strop. I use like magazines. I have like a couple of leather sheaths that I use for stropping. But no, I don't use it as part of my process where I'm like, I really need to strop in order to feel finished. Dior Peterson, you should send me an email. I have like and I also, if you go to my Twitter at Justin_Kana, my pinned tweet is my response to this. So if you follow me on Twitter, if you want to look me up on Twitter, it's the first tweet, like the pinned tweet on my profile is my, general answer to this. And if you want to email me and talk through stuff more, please feel free to do so. It is not with Vincent from Corin, Phil, unfortunately. This is in relation to Ninox. I asked Vincent from Corin, and this isn't talking shit on Vincent, this is more like Corin as a company and how they interact with Ninox. I asked Corin, I said, hey, I want to work with this project with Ninox. Can you help out? And they're like, no, actually, like we have this relationship, blah, 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 blah. And so I just DM'd Ninox directly, and that's how things are kind of snowballing. It's nothing against Vincent. I love Vincent, and I really like, that has been one of the reasons why I don't push this, you know what I mean? Like I respect their relationship so much. Like I think there's only two or three companies in the US, in North America, right? There's like I and Ohm, there's Corin, and then I think Japanese Knife Imports are the only three places in the US where you can get Ninox knives because they value their relationship so much. They don't want every single store to carry their knives. So anyways. Okay, Tojiro DP will be something Tojiro, like a side-by-side, will be on the channel by the end of the year. And I need you folks to hold me accountable to that because it is the one like company line brand of knives that is like industry cult favorite that I haven't done a review on yet. And so people compare it to the Fibrox Pro, they compare it to the Meeson knife, they compare it to any Zwilling Henkel knife. It's like the most accessible entry point into Japanese blades. And I don't actually own one. Like I have a ton of coworkers in the past when I was working in restaurants who would use them. And so I'm very familiar with them. Like I know how they feel. I used to sharpen, the butcher at Per Se used to use a Tojiro. And so I used to sharpen his knives. But I don't have one. And so I want to get a bunch and I want to do something cool because they're such a budget knife. Like I want to buy like 5 of them and just like give them away or like offer them at 50% off or something cool as part of that video. So hold me accountable. Something with Tojiro by the end of 2021. Miyabi is another interesting brand that I haven't worked with. I don't own a Miyabi. I've held them. I haven't worked with them from the sense of like going through a full work week with a Miyabi. Pretty. They're very pretty. The steel is very hard. I've reached out to them about doing a review on their black line because I think that those from they look the coolest, and I think they will probably perform the best. But no, I don't. I'm very similar with restaurants in this sense, where I don't like to speak on brands or knives that I haven't worked with myself, because I just think it's a little misleading. I think that there's a lot of blanket statements that people make, or like there's certain companies where I don't like the look of their knives, but I can respect the steel that they use or the blade profile they choose or what have you, like I don't necessarily think that certain Victorinox knives are all that great, but the Fibrox Pro is a really good knife, And so I'm always conscious of how that comes off. And because I have kind of marketed myself or kind of like positioned myself as I even struggle to use the word authority on this because it's just like if the knife cuts, it's a tool, everybody, you know? So it's kind of like all these little tweaks on aesthetics and, you know, Damascus patterns and the colors, like the one I'm thinking of is like the light wood handle with the pop of red and the Damascus pattern. Like those are all aesthetic choices that that company makes to kind of like, they want to see a knife like that out in the world, and they think that it will appeal to a certain number of people. And so yeah, that's just like general big picture, but I would love to work with Miyabi on something in the future, because I think their knives look good. I don't have enough experience with them to say. Lols. Person with the jokes. Bird's beak knives are hard. I promised I would also show a thing on curved blades, and so I want to keep going, and then I will kind of like get back to this in a second. Short and sweet answer, Jack. I kind of gravitate towards, one second, I'm going to show you. So like this is a knife that I bought from Town Cutler that's going to be part of the review. Can you see it? Is it going to focus? Yes, it is. This is like a K-tip paring knife. And this basically replaces Tournay knives, because it swoops up the other way. And I know that it's not ideal for like cleaning radishes or de-stemming strawberries or whatever kind of like project that you use this for. But I like this, and I'm willing to spend a lot of money on something like this, relatively speaking, because I know that I can sharpen this, and it can be like a longevity piece. You can, you know, use a honing rod and really kind of like tweak the edge for it, but it's really difficult. The other short answer for you is to like use the edge of your stone and just kind of like work that curved edge. And again, work really slow when you start, and then you can get speed. Usually bird's beak knives don't have the hardest steel, and so you don't need that much work to reshape the edge, number one. Number two, I'm always just a big fan of like, buy the cheap Victorinox one. Once the edge goes to shit, hone it a few times, you know, using a stone or using a honing rod, get it back to where it needs to be. Use it until it's like, this really needs some help. And either talk to a professional. Like I don't see an issue in you going to like Seattle Edge or Corin or, you know, any professional sharpener to get that re-upped for you. Or if it's a cheap one, you can just kind of like retire that to the home kitchen, you know, and then end up just buy a new one for yourself. Let's see. Vino. So happy that you're here. I hope you get a chance to sharpen today. Oh, Takeda. Takeda's an interesting one. So Takeda's so funny because I had a Takeda. One of you folks reached out to me and wanted to buy it from me, and I wasn't really using it that much. And I had used it in some thumbnails, and I mostly used it when I was in Norway. I was working with a ton of fish at the time, and I really liked having my Takeda. And so I sold it to him, and like I gave him whatever discount off of it because it was a used piece. And he was happy because he was living in Southeast Asia, and you can't really find those knives all that frequently. And, you know, I gave him a big enough discount on it, and I sent it. It got sent. They didn't like the taxes, import stuff. They sent it back to the US, and then they lost it in sending it back to the US. So I lost my Takeda, and I had to give him his money. I gladly gave him his money back. I was like, you didn't get your knife. I'm really sorry. And USPS was supposed to like cover the cost of the knife and the shipping thing, but like I used to have a Takeda. I no longer have a Takeda. That's my story on Takeda. The slicers from Takeda, which is the one that I had, they're very thin. And I learned the first time I tried butchering fish with my Takeda, again, mine was thin, it bent, like it curves the edge, and it's really depressing. So if you're gonna get a Takeda, because I know they look beautiful, I know the steel is legendary, I know the hammered pattern and the look of it is just like, people drool over that stuff, I would, if I had to do it again, I would buy a thicker Takeda, because when the steel is made up, like the makeup of the steel is like that, you don't want the blade to be that thin. It's actually a disservice to the knife. And I don't know why they make them like that, but part of the reason I was okay with selling it, you know, because I told him, I was like, this is kind of like, and I was able to get it back aligned. Like it was perfectly straight when I would sharpen it, like everything was okay. But it was like, I didn't like that I had to baby that knife. As you can see, like I kind of go for knives that can they can hold their own. They don't need to be handheld. And so if I had to buy a Takeda again, I would get a thicker one. Spectrum Gaming had a bad experience at a stage and it really knocked your confidence, even though you're a good student and work hard. Do you have any advice to regain confidence? Come to terms with the fact that we all have bad days. Every single one of us, of the 54 people watching here, either has had a bad day or we're going to have a bad day in the future. And that doesn't stop any of us from, you know, like putting our apron on and going back to work again the next day. Like, just because, like, there's an element of like public embarrassment that comes with it, right? Like you look like an idiot in front of a bunch of people. Like, watch that video of mine. It's like, what is the title of the video? Someone can leave it in the chat if you know what I'm talking about. But it's like, it's such a shitty feeling to feel like an idiot or look like an idiot. And us as humans, do everything we can do to avoid it. I think you just have to you have to approach your next out of your comfort zone opportunity, whether that's another stage or whether that's another busy service that you have coming up, or you have like a big test coming up. Like, do your best to, and I don't know you as a person, so the advice might go one way or another. You either need to remove your identity or you need to attach more of your identity to this thing. And you'll know based on who you are. You know, I don't want to speak to it if I don't know who you are, but it's like a lot of times you feel like this is bad on me, Spectrum Gaming, as a person, when in reality it's just like you had a bad performance on the field. You know, like, do you ever see those footage, like when the quarterback throws the ball, it gets intercepted, and they zoom in on the quarterback? Do you know what I mean? That's a bad performance on that quarterback. He fucked up on the field. You know what I mean? That doesn't make him a bad person. And I think it's so easy to get caught in like, I'm a chef, I'm a line cook, I'm a whatever. And so when I suck at this thing, it's a bad reflection on me as a person. And in reality, it's not, you know? So, and when you can get over that, then you can just look at it like, oh, cool. Like, the other team's going to get the ball, and then we're going to get the ball back, and then I'm going to try again, you know? Because that's all it is, right? Like, it's just performance after performance after play after play after play after touchdown after interception after whatever. And like, sorry to use the sports analogy, but like, don't think that has to, like, if you're at home on the couch, you're screaming at that quarterback if he brings that energy to the next set of downs, you know? Because you're like, that happened already. It's in the past. Let it go, you know? And then move on. And then I hope that's helpful. Externship this summer for culinary school, but with regulations, it's difficult to find a restaurant. Everybody's dealing with that. If you can't get to your dream place, you could potentially, I've told this story a couple times, where there's a 1-star Michelin Italian restaurant in Chicago that I almost did my externship at, and I almost worked for Alex Stupak at Empillon in New York because Per Se told me to go get a line cook job somewhere else before I came back to Per Se. And so I told myself, you know, like, I'm never going to learn how to make tacos ever again in my career, so why don't I go? Like, I had this full plan to be a sous chef at a Thomas Keller restaurant, so this is going to be my one shot to make tacos, and it's going to be fun. If you can't find your dream place, could you find something that, you know, you're still interested and passionate about the food? That's kind of like the nugget that I want to kind of leave you with, is don't settle for a place and then resent that decision, which then affects your performance, which then, do you know what I mean? It starts to spiral. So if you can find something that's like, this isn't actually my ideal place, but they're making really cool food here, and I'm learning a lot about a specific cuisine, or like it's all wood fire or something like that, that can then, set you up for when the world does open up again, you're still inspired and engaged in the industry to kind of like take advantage of an opportunity that might pop up. I really hope to use a Miyabi in the future, especially from the Black Series. Ooh, that's hard. That's really hard. 2 millimeters, that's deep. So I would, if it were me, every single time I sharpened, I would do the whole gamut, like work it down, work it down, work it down. But in the meantime, if it's in the middle, it might be 2/3, 1/3, whatever. In the meantime, I would treat it like two separate stones, from the sense of, if this was all your stone was, sharpen on that section, halfway through, flip it, and if it's this little 1/3 section, treat this as a tiny stone. So it's like you're still working with that stone, and over time, like, you might actually work down a little bit. It's really depressing when you have to like carve that much off of a stone, but it's like you could still get use out of it. And then every single time you use it, because you're, forming these little micro scratches in it, you're kind of like over time just going to get to a point when you're finally, everybody knows that feeling where you do the couple last passes with the stone fixer and you look at your stone and it's perfectly clean. Like, you'll get there, but in the meantime, don't think that you can't use it. Just maybe treat it as two separate stones and then just get the even use out of it by flipping it around, if that's helpful. Tips on going through cookbooks to gain ideas. Write menus. You will realize what techniques, what flavor combinations, like sets you like based on how you deploy those ideas. So it's like, tell yourself you're going to write a 6-course tasting menu. Tell yourself you're going to write a seafood dinner party. Tell yourself you're going to write, you're going to open a fast casual concept, and use that as a creative exercise to go through and decide like, oh, I like this. This is cool. I used to do that all the time in my notebooks. I would, like, on my days off, I would open a bunch of cookbooks, go through and write sets or steal sets. I would like steal them. Like, white asparagus, grapefruit, caviar sounds really interesting. I would write that down as a set, and then I'm going to go back and see this curated list of highlights from cookbooks that you like. Or maybe you might decide, like, I want to do this pork shoulder dish, but I want to do XYZ rub that I saw in another book, you know what I mean, that I'm interested in. Fuck yeah, Vino. Pick back up. This is so true. I think there's a lot of people who just like, they're so committed to, like this video, everybody. If you're here and you're hanging out and you haven't liked the video yet, or you're not subscribed and you're getting value right now from just hanging out, like the video. It helps more people see that you like this video. Yeah, there's a lot of chefs who just like continue to want to pass down, and it's like, it can be subtle, right? Like, you don't actually want to be mean, but when shit hits the fan or someone really fucks up, you have this instinctual desire to raise your voice or call names or degrade someone just because that's how you were treated when you made that mistake. And so there's a lot of people who just perpetuate this cycle of negativity going down. And as long as you can be the one to break the cycle, like, we're good. I'm happy that was helpful. And also, I'm happy that was helpful. Okay, let's move on. We're on, okay, can we do the unboxing? I think everybody has, like, if you've sharpened, you're sharpened, and I might actually, like, just do my 3000 grit and then call it good. But I really want to show you folks this cutting board, and I want to open it up on camera. So are we cool with that? I'm going to go run and get it, and I'll be right back. That was a lot of talking. Grabbing something for unboxing. Be right back. This is like an aim away message. Be right back. Okay, let's take this off. Let's take this off. Yes. And I don't want to share it yet. I really regret. So when I went to Per Se, like a year ago, it was exactly a year ago, a year and 6 months ago, I did not know that I was going to sit in the salon and have a 6-course tasting menu, because I was supposed to eat at Le Bernardin, and I planned on shooting a video about Le Bernardin. And I really regret not shooting a video at Per Se, because I truly wasn't expecting to get fed. I wanted, you know what I wanted? I wanted cornets, and I wanted oysters and pearls, and that's what I ordered, and then things happened. But it's not to say that there won't be a Thomas Keller video this year. Okay. Oh, Alfonso's here. Ernesto's here. It's amazing. Okay, so this is getting opened. Okay. So this came today. Thanks, Brett. I'm going to open this, and then I'm going to give context, because I want to get this box out of the way first. Okay. Okay, so box is out of the way. So for context, this is not even my cutting board. The cutting board that I use in all my videos, it's what I use to cook at home. It's what I use to like do some product photography sometimes with certain knives. This is my old roommate's booze block, which is like, I've never used the cream on it. I've never used the oil. I've never done like the lemon salt rub thing. I used to take this to events, and I put a Binchotan grill on this once on my station, because like I was clean, I didn't need to cut anything anymore, and I didn't want to burn the table, so I put the board down and then I put the grill on it, which causes like, you know, and like I put my Le Creuset pot lid here, which like dried and gave this weird stain effect, and I'm sure I could like retreat this board and make it, you know, nice again, but like I haven't bought a new board for myself because this works just fine, and you know, I'm acknowledging that it's a bit of a janky solution. So one of you folks was nice enough to reach out, and you make really nice boards, and it came today. And so I was like, oh, this live stream's happening today. Why don't I just unbox it and we can get my live reaction on it? Dude, Pedro, I need to hear how you're doing. Please send me an email. Please, please, please send me an email. That was a very memorable moment for me as well, to meet you. So, Ernesto, I want to come visit you, man. How are things? Okay, unboxing, the matter at hand. This is in this frame, it should not be there. Okay. This person makes cutting boards, and if I'm not mistaken, my logo might be on this cutting board. Isn't that crazy? This is not something again, back to me not liking GIFs or like liking, I'm completely fine dealing with the like 8-year-old janky ass booze block. This is very, very, damn. All right, that's the company. Custom Woodworks. Oh man, and look at this side. That is dope. So there's like, you can't really see it on the thing, but like there's 2 red lines going through this. There's like grip handles on either side, and the logo looks dope. I haven't done like a real breakdown of the logo, but for anybody who doesn't know, like the graphic designer that I worked with is a very close friend. It's actually the guy who bought me this sink bridge thing, and it's a combination of like there's a quenelle at the bottom, obviously, because it's like technique, finesse, you know, like constantly progressing, and then it's like an upward arrow, right? So it's like, you know, this idea of like constant growth, contribution. Wow, this is really, really cool, guys. It's like inlaid too. So I think from what he told me, and I think this is accurate, so this is supposed to be the cutting side. So this is the one where it's like, you know, you put a container up here and you like prep into that container. This is all super, super smooth. And then this side, this is like like this is like, he burnt this almost. So he did the carve. It's like a 1/2 millimeter thick. If everybody can see that. Sorry, Mike. It's like 1/2 millimeter. Yeah, you can see it better when I shine the light like that. And so this is like a display side. So then I can like, you know, put a plate of food right here. And then my logo's right there. This is insane. I'm very, very impressed. Yeah, this is wild. So this side also has like, let's see if I can get the light right. So this is also divoted out a little bit, like not as deep, but this will be the cutting side, I think, and then this is the display side. Wow. Anna's gonna freak out. Talk about things I need to hide from the girlfriend, everybody. Anna's not gonna get to cut on this. Okay. Yeah, you can really, hang on. Can you see the colors? Like you can really see the pop of red there, right? Can you see that? I hope everybody can see that. Anyways, insanely impressed. Very, very happy with that. That's going to be like, this person was so kind to reach out, and they work at Nestle, I'm pretty sure. And they do that as like a side hustle on the side. And one of their coworkers suggested my channel. And he sent me a cutting board. So that will probably go out in this week's newsletter. If you're not subscribed to the newsletter, just sign up on my website, justincana.com/newsletter, and I will share all the information about the boards and how to get in touch with this person, especially if you like have custom ideas you want to work out. But yeah, super happy with that. We are over time. We are 20 minutes over time. Any other questions that I can answer or things that people think of? Natural stones. Question on natural stones. I think for higher grit stones that you either want to use as polishing agents or, so like, here's the thing. Dalstrong sent me a bunch of stones, and I don't know how to describe it, but after using the Mizuyama stones, these feel natural to me. Like there's the Dalstrong ones feel synthetic. they just like, they soak up water like crazy, and the feedback isn't as good. I don't really feel the difference in grit between the 1000 grit and the 6000 grit that they have. Whereas these, the Mizuyamas that I use, these feel like they have character. You know, like they swell and contract. They get divots and scratches in them. They respond to steel really well. And again, I've used natural stones in a very high grit fashion. I haven't used natural stones in a way that is like, all I do is use natural stones. But from a feeling perspective, the natural stones that I've used that are high grit used for polishing, they feel much closer to these than like Dalstrongs or Kings or, you know, any of these other synthetic, more synthetic feeling stones. And again, I'm talking touchy-feely stuff, which is like, until you get enough knife sharpening experience under your belt, it's hard to articulate this. Brett, you do great work, man. You do great work. Surprise! I don't think I told you I was going to unbox it today. But here it is. Okay. That's awesome, man. So Ernesto came and staged at the restaurant in Norway, and we had a great time. And then he moved to Copenhagen and started working with Rosio Sanchez on a bunch of her projects. The second I can make it to Copenhagen, so we talk about it internally, like when we open a European office, we want to do it in Copenhagen. It's just like, it's the city. Jackpots, Shapton glass worth it. Again, one that I have not used. I have had coworkers who use them. Like, I've gone over to coworkers' houses in the past, and I see like, oh, they have the glass stones. And I've certainly gone to shops. Like, back in the day, JB Prince used to carry the Shapton glass stones. It's like a workflow thing in my mind. Like, if it allows you to sharpen your knives faster and doesn't affect the quality of the edge. I mean, there's so much like semantic detail, you know, kind of like debate that happens, but in reality, like, it's like a bit of a caveman thing, you know? Like, it's putting a piece of metal up against a rock, you know? Whether that rock is natural or made in a factory, or it's a piece of glass, or you're using oil or water, it's kind of like the mechanic, what's happening is the same, you know? It's like, does it work with your workflow? Does it work with the steel that you're pushing up against it? You know, those are like the more important things. So, you know, worth it depends, right? And I hate to, you know, say that because it's not like a yes or no, but I also hesitate to kind of like paint things with a broad brush. You're so welcome. Dude, Brett, thank you. How do I store my stones? So after today, I will leave the stones, like you can see one right here, laying up against the counter. Again, feel free to use something like this, where you can just kind of like, they can air dry for 24 hours, probably minimum. And then I put them on like, you know, like a cafeteria lunch tray. Like, there's a lot of people who use like trays to store their knives. Like, you have a cafeteria lunch tray, towel, knives go on that. I have one of those in the top shelf of my toolbox. So I have all the knives, and then in that top shelf, there's the tray, and I keep those on it. And I store them in a way where like this, you know, is kind of like angled on this. And I know you can't really see that well. But then I'll also use like the bridge, like the elevation thing, to kind of like make sure that, and the tray is such where it's textured, so that nothing is like pressing against a flat surface where a seal can form, because that's where the issues happen, right? And because the drawer is not airtight, they're on a tray, they're in the drawer, so they're protected, but the airflow can happen. It's the people who put them in like, I used to use like it was like a half plastic hotel pan with a lid. Bad news. You need the airflow. And you might get you might decide that after 72 hours of drying, they're fine to store in that plastic container with the lid, right? But until then, you have to because if these really soak up water, it's going to take some time for the water to get to the surface and then evaporate, right? So more airflow, the better. Pedro, this sink bridge is from Kramer, funny enough, and Zwilling Henkel makes this. This was a gift from a friend from the guy who also made the logo, the J Connett logo. Okay, everyone, we are way over time, 30 minutes over time. I'm super happy I got to do that unboxing. Thank you again, Brett, for sending that out and for making it. I'm excited to feature it in future videos and give you all the love in the world, because it's amazing that you would do that. And I'm just going to finish up here doing some more sharpening stuff. Just get all the blades where I need them to be. And if you folks have questions, please feel free to DM me as per usual. I should probably plug the community because we do this every single Monday. So it's replaced Patreon on my channel, where it's $5 a month. There's not tiers. So I used to have it like $3, $9, $29. This is $5 for everybody, and you get access to a community. It's basically like a private Facebook page, where we talk about industry news and who's coming on the podcast. And like, I shared with everybody there that I was working with New West, so you get to see what gear is coming up. And then it's also like, someone who's a food scientist shared this really cool culinary conference with everybody last week. So it's like things that I can't even, share with everybody, because the comment section of YouTube is such a black hole and you can't search for things. So the service that I use to host the community is really good for like really evergreen content, getting into conversation, starting your own topics, asking questions like all the, and questions you folks asked me, like, what stones do I use? So I'm debating between this knife or that knife. And so that community is where you do that. And every single Monday, I do a live stream with the community where we just bring a project we're working on and we work on it for an hour. So the goal being that in 2021, you will make 40 hours, because it's 1 week, 1 hour a week times 52 weeks. That's one whole work week of progress on a project you're working on. Whether that's, I need menus for my pop-up. I'm working on my course, like I'm writing my course. I want to launch an email newsletter. I want to start an Instagram page. I want to run a special at work. I want to learn how to write resumes for culinary school students, whatever. We host that there. We meet every single Monday. We haven't missed a Monday. And that's part of the community. That's included, right? These, at the end of the month, the last Monday of every month, I just open them up to everybody as a way to get more people excited about joining the community, because I want more people to be there. The more people that are there, the more vibrant the community, the more value that everybody can extract and benefit from those connections. So if you got value from this, and if you can, again, no pressure, sign up to the community. The cool thing is I include a lot of the conversations that happen in the community on my email newsletter. So another way to interact for free. A heads up, if you are like super avid viewer of the channel, if you're here, you probably are that. I'm getting my wisdom teeth out on Friday. So podcast might not happen next week. I'm doing an interview tomorrow. My guest from last week had to reschedule because of he lives in Texas. And so all the wildness, I was like, dude, please reschedule with me. You have bigger fish to fry. And so, yeah, there's a lot of cool content coming up. And so I'm excited for you folks to be a part of that. So if you're watching and you are not subscribed, please do so. And if you can, or if you want to, if you're interested, you can support my content for $5 a month via my community. That's in, what is the link? Let me leave the link right here. In the chat. I'm putting it in the chat. Boom. Anyways, thank you folks for being here. Thanks for hanging out. Please stay well, and I'll see you folks on the last Monday of next month, of March, when I will have 4 less teeth in my mouth. Thanks again, everybody. Bye.